Poseidon arrives in Greek mythology the way a wave arrives before you hear it, not as a ruler seated on a throne, but as a force that has already decided what it wants. He is not simply the deity of the ocean, he is what the ocean becomes when it stops being a pathway and starts being a decision. He also governs earthquakes and horses, a pairing that sounds strange until you sit with it long enough. All three belong to the same ancient instinct: velocity, collision, and uncontrolled momentum. When the ground heaves without warning, when a horse tears free of every grip, when a glassy horizon erupts into towering walls of water, the Greeks understood these as one deity moving through different bodies. Like his brothers Zeus and Hades, Poseidon is a child of Cronus and Rhea, part of the generation that dismantled the Titans and carved the universe into portions. Zeus received the heavens, Hades received the world of the dead, Poseidon received the sea. But received is almost too tidy a word. The sea is never truly owned. That is exactly the point. Zeus governs through structure and sovereignty. Hades governs through inevitability. Poseidon governs through turbulence. He is among the supreme powers of the Greek universe, but he is never its tranquil center. He is the surge beneath the calm, the trembling that arrives before the collapse, the pressure building underneath the visible world. This is why Poseidon can feel so breathtaking in one story and so devastating in the next. Sailors addressed prayers to him because the ocean was the road of trade, war, displacement, and survival. But they dreaded him for precisely that same reason. The Greeks did not picture the sea as a peaceful backdrop. They knew it as a place where people vanished without ceremony. A god of the sea therefore could never be ornamental. He had to be fearsome, swift to grant favor, swift to withdraw it, capable of saving and destroying within a single breath. His symbols carry the same message. The trident is not merely a weapon, it is a tool of dominion, something that can churn the ocean floor, split solid rock apart, and mark its holder as sovereign over everything that refuses to stay still. Ancient tradition also ties him to the horse, not only as a patron deity, but as a creator. In some accounts, he fashions the very first horse from nothing. In cult and worship, he is called Poseidon Hippios, Poseidon of horses. The connection only puzzles us when we draw too sharp a line between sea and land. For the Greeks, galloping hooves on stone and waves exploding against a cliff could belong to the same living energy, thunderous, ungovernable, and magnificent for exactly that reason. And then there is one of his oldest titles, Earth's Shaker. That name deserves its weight. It reminds us that Poseidon never belonged only to the ocean. He belongs to deep force itself. He is whatever moves foundations. He is the reminder that arrives without invitation, the one that tells every mortal that the ground beneath their feet is not as permanent as they have been telling themselves. Before he becomes a figure in famous tales of vengeance, rivalry, and fury, Poseidon is already something immense in Greek religion, the deity of motion that human beings may use but never master. That is why his myths return again and again to the same conflict, the struggle over territory, honor, and recognition. He does not simply inhabit the world, he contests it. One of the most celebrated examples is the contest over Athens. Both Poseidon and Athena desire to become the city's patron deity. The rivalry cuts deeper than a simple argument between gods. It is a confrontation between two entirely different kinds of power. Poseidon presents a gift rooted in ancient sources, either a spring of salt water or a horse, both expressions of force, prestige, and the reach of maritime ambition. Athena offers the olive tree, nourishment, oil, craft, and the quiet continuity of something that feeds you through every season. The city chooses Athena, and in that moment, Greek myth does something subtle and brilliant. It does not argue that Poseidon is powerless. It says his power is genuine, impressive, and insufficient. Raw force may dazzle on contact, but civic life rests on something that outlasts the spectacle. Poseidon does not forget when he has been passed over. That pattern appears again in the story of Troy. In one version, both Poseidon and Apollo serve King Laomedon and help raise the city's legendary walls. When the labor is finished, Laomedon refuses to honor what was agreed. This is not a minor oversight. In Greek myth, denying a just exchange is a declaration of arrogance, and arrogance in Greek myth always finds an answer. Poseidon responds with exactly the kind of punishment that defines him. He sends a sea monster toward Troy. The consequence is mythically precise. A king dismantles obligation and proper order, and Poseidon turns the boundary between sea and shore into a threshold of terror. What should have stood as the city's protection becomes the opening through which its punishment arrives. These episodes reveal something essential about who Poseidon actually is. He is not formless, senseless chaos. His fury has architecture. He punishes violated borders, unpaid debts, withheld reverence, and denied recognition. His retribution may be colossal, but it is almost always anchored to a prior insult. And that makes him far more unsettling, not less. A purely irrational god frightens you once. A god whose wrath follows a precise internal logic frightens you indefinitely. The same tension threads through his connection to horses and wild creation. Poseidon is consistently associated with offspring and creatures that carry something excessive inside them. Monsters, giants, impossible animals, heroic bloodlines threaded with danger. Even Pegasus, the winged horse born from Medusa's spilled blood, belongs partly to Poseidon's mythic territory. So does the deeper idea that the sea, like the horse, is beautiful precisely because it was never fully domesticated.
This is what makes Poseidon so compelling across all of Greek myths. He is not villainous. He is not simply moody or temperamental. He is a divine portrait of power that resists human certainty.
Cities may thrive, kings may negotiate, sailors may grow bold. But the older truth remains intact. There are forces underneath civilization that hold no particular admiration for how impressive civilization appears from above. And when those forces choose to respond, they tend to respond in Poseidon's voice. And nowhere does that voice grow louder than in the story of Odysseus. After the fall of Troy, Odysseus ought to be heading home. Instead, his return stretches into years, shipwrecks, losses, wrong turns, and grief that never quite finishes arriving. Many forces shape that journey, but Poseidon becomes its dominant adversary because of what unfolds inside the cave of Polyphemus. Odysseus blinds the Cyclops to keep himself and his men alive. In one reading, this is intelligence at its most heroic. In another reading, it is the first step toward catastrophe. Why? Because Polyphemus is Poseidon's son, and because Odysseus, incapable of leaving a triumph unannounced, shouts his real name as he sails away. That boast changes everything. It transforms survival into provocation. Polyphemus raises a prayer to Poseidon, asking that Odysseus never reach home, or if fate demands otherwise, that he arrive late, shattered, and completely alone. That curse becomes one of the central engines of the entire Odyssey. Poseidon does not simply eliminate Odysseus. That would be too efficient, mythically too small. Instead, he makes the ocean itself into a hostile territory. The road home becomes the instrument of punishment. Every wave carries the memory of what was said. Every storm is a repetition of the original offense. This is Poseidon at his most characteristic. His revenge is not only violent, it is thematic. Odysseus is the man of cunning, of movement, of passage from one world to the next. So Poseidon attacks passage itself. The sea, which should connect one shore to another, one life to the next, becomes a zone of divine refusal. And because the Odyssey is one of the foundational poems of human storytelling, Poseidon's anger grows larger than a single grievance. It becomes a meditation on the edges of human cleverness. Odysseus can outmaneuver monsters, win allies through charm, wear 100 different faces, and endure almost any punishment the world invents. But he cannot negotiate the wounded pride of a god he chose to humiliate on his way out the door. Even at the story's end, Poseidon endures in the imagination because he stands for a truth the Greeks never chose to soften. Intelligence is formidable, but it does not cancel consequence. Skill does not replace reverence, and movement through the world is never entirely a human decision. That is why Poseidon outlasts so many simpler gods. He is more than a bearded figure brandishing a trident above the surf. He is the mythic truth that the very thing carrying you can become the thing that ends you. The same ocean that makes trade, exploration, empire, and homecoming possible can become a grave before the afternoon is finished. The same earth that feels permanent underfoot can open without warning. The same energy that produces speed and grandeur can become panic and wreckage before anyone has time to name what changed. So when the Greeks looked at Poseidon, they were not simply picturing a sea deity, they were picturing the world at the exact point where usefulness ends and submission begins. A god of storms, oceans, and vengeance, yes, but even more than that, a god of unstable power itself. The force that civilization depends on, dreads, and never fully commands. And that may be why Poseidon still feels so alive. He is not merely Lord of the Deep. The gods we know are simply superhuman figures, not creators, mythical characters born from superstition and retold as entertainment.